All right, so we are back now for our second conversation. And where we had left off with our last one was we had challenged each other to write a poem for the other. And Charlie, do you want to share a little bit about how that happened in the first place?
Sure. Yes. A couple years ago, I was down at a poetry festival in Florida, and Terrence Hayes was my workshop leader. And he gave us this prompt. He said, write down, actually, that is not the case. Let me tell you what really happened. There's two ways that I do this, okay? We might have to do that other one. I'm forgetting my story. The real story is this. Many years ago, I was asked by a friend of mine, Al Albinato, to do poems on demand at the Visual Studies workshop. There were small presses there for a festival, and Writers and Books set up a little shop where I had a manual typewriter, and people came up to me and asked for a poem. And I had this process that I shared with you last time, that I would ask, give me 5 words you like, give me a subject, and tell me a story that moved you somehow emotionally. Yeah. And so that's what we did with each other.
And that subject of the poem.
Right.
Got it. Well, I guess since we did the challenge, we might as well read the poems.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear yours.
Yeah, perfect. So who should go first here?
Well, you're the host, so I'll defer to you.
Okay. I will read my poem for you first, if that sounds good.
Great.
All
Wonderful.
Right. Beautiful. So the subject that you gave me was disappointment. We're dealing with disappointment. And the 5 words that you gave me were, in no particular order, rooster, goldfish, light switch, frame, and fern. And the story that you had told me, kind of the crux of it, was that you and your wife had put a lot of effort into a party that you were hosting for your friends, and where the expectation was really that you two had wanted this to be a welcoming environment. And so the party was starting, and at the same time, your son, who's a musician, was playing in a show, and you had missed some of the previous shows, and he was going away on his honeymoon soon. And so you really, wanted to be there. And he messaged you and said that he was about to come up. And so, time was of the essence, and you rushed over, asked your wife if she wanted to go too. And she said, sure. And ordered an Uber, which then showed up 8 minutes before the last guest had to leave. And it was a situation. And you had said, you felt embarrassed. She, felt embarrassed. The guests were a little confused. And
exactly.
Yeah. And so, anyways, that was the story.
Yep.
And so this is my poem for you, and I'm pulling it up. So the poem is called Ding. Sitting in the frame, you inspire in me hope, a welcoming home. Ding, the doorbell rings, announcing old friends are here. Rooster to the sun. Glove, our goldfish swims, but I will never forget my promise to you. Ding, your praise are here. Once in air, twice a mistake. How I do miss you. Honey, will you come? Too sweet to miss one more time. Time is gone too soon. Ding, time for a ride. Flicking the light switch on, off. Are you coming with? What? How could I know? Do you see what's happening? Who became this man? What? This is not me. Caught between past and present. I meant harm to none. Hush, I need my time to reflect and then to talk. Go, enjoy yourself. For you are my fern. Forever youthful you are. Together we grow.
Nice. I like the way that resolved. Yeah. There's redemption there. Yay. My shame is memorialized, or, I'll be remembering it forever when I read that poem. I love it.
Yeah.
It'll be good. It'll be like a lesson for me. Slow down. Don't be in such a rush. I think I told you before that when we got there, um, we had to wait another half hour for the bands to show up.
Yeah.
So all that worry for nothing. I love it, man. Have you written poems before?
Maybe in like 8th grade class.
Wow.
Every once in a while, I'll write a poem. I wrote one recently for a friend. It was a very short haiku, but I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Well, I know you like to do improv, and poetry and comedy share a similar trait in that poetry, unlike prose, operates on surprise, or what we call the unexpected inevitability. Something that when it shows up, you go, oh, of course, but you weren't expecting it. And the same thing happens in improv. Whereas in prose, it works mostly on suspense, on what's going to happen next, right?
Yeah. I like that, the unexpected inevitability.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite classes I took on Udemy once was taught by this guy, Greg Dean, who is a teacher of stand-up comics. He's taught like Whoopi Goldberg and Anthony Jeselnik and some other famous comedians. And I really loved his class. But one of the things that he talked about was the structure of jokes, and what is so important, just like you were saying, is that there's always one thing that creates or that can have multiple meanings. And the setup of the joke creates the first story in the audience's mind.
Right.
And based on an assumption, and the assumption hangs on that word that has multiple meanings, or phrase that has multiple meanings. And the punchline breaks plays on that assumption and breaks the audience's attention and gets them to think about that in a new way.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, are you ready for mine? To you?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right. So your subject was misunderstanding, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And your words were difficult, thwap, Shazam, sing song, water, and movement. Water and movement, not so hard, but the other ones, not so easy. And then you told me a story about the tragedy in Pittsburgh, and the reaction that your father had, and how impressed you were, not only about the depth of his reaction, but also that he, instead of going to the vigil that was here in Rochester, continued to serve his clients or students like he always does. And that really moved you. So with that said, this poem's called What We Hear, We Mishear. When water makes the sound of pain, blood thwap on marble in a congregation of promise, we render our lips mute, our tears held back like a vigil, and there we offer the power to speak, because we will not remain silent, because we are a blink of an eye, because tomorrow is only sing-song, today Shazam, tomorrow night, today afraid, because widow is to orphan, is to sweep these dreams away, because widow is to orphan, is to sweep these dreams away, because our life is a sigh, a yearling lamb, smoke on the altar. What we hear, we mishear, for we are infernal, speckled on the curtains, a benediction of mangled worlds. We keep on crossing them out, those ashen places our ancestors led to slaughter. How can we not hear that silence in the flames, the movement of light on our faces, what we remember when water makes the sound of pain?
Yeah, that was moving.
It surprised me that all that came out. I think there's so much
What?
going on in this culture right now across the world with these kind of tragedies, and it just stuns us. And all that pressure builds up inside, and maybe that's what happened there, that all that pressure and the words that you gave me just gave me an occasion to write something like that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like there were like common themes between the two poems. One to me was about the miscommunication or the mishearing,
Right.
or even judgment based on undue pressure. Like one was in the poem I wrote for you. I think it was mainly the past experiences that you had with your son, with your all these different things building up to the moment where that text message he said, you saying, "Hey, we're on soon," triggered this story in your mind of this sense of pressure.
Right.
And yeah, and then you're wrestling with the past experiences that you had and wanting to be there for him, and then also you have the reality of in the moment the guests are there with their own expectations, and you and your wife having your own expectations, and what do you do in a moment like that? And then I feel like in the poem that you read, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just yeah. Are you not listening? Well, almost on like the flip side, it's like, are you not listening to past experiences and learning from them?
Right. Yeah. And then also the mishearing that happens when you're put under so much pressure. I listened to a podcast the other day run by Sharon Saltzman, who's an expert on mindfulness and teaches all over the world. And she had a neuroscientist who's at the University of Miami talking about the mindfulness-based stress training that they're doing, or the research they're doing down there, and looking at the impacts on executive functioning, in particular impulse control and presence of mind and resiliency. And in particular, they're doing research with people in the military, which is kind of interesting. Kind of ironic too, when you think about mindfulness practice and Buddhism, and then training warriors to be more mindful, right? So, and they talked about that too, which was interesting. But through mindfulness practice, becoming more aware and present to the moment right now helps us to hear more clearly and to not misperceive things and to not react with anxiety. But, if somebody's coming into your congregation and shooting, I think, you're going to have a hard time paying attention. And just the shock of that, and then hearing about it and feeling a solidarity for those people, it really kind of messes with your sense perceptions, So
yeah,
I think that might have something to do with it. But I was just struck by, the connection of what's happening now being something that's been happening for so long, and we don't really learn the lesson. We don't learn, that we're all part of the same human family,
Yeah. What are you thinking?
I think that we're still seeing people, devolving into a kind of tribalism and, us versus them, and, fomenting hate towards other people, seeing other people as other and not as our brothers and sisters. And so, we get this kind of violent reactions and scapegoating that's still going on for, whole people's groups, and it's pretty unsettling.
Yeah. The tribalism thing is an interesting one to me. I I forgot if I had told you this, but I got a chance to see Michael Pollan speak when I was back in San Francisco. Do you know who Michael Pollan is?
That name's familiar to me, but it's not ringing a bell. What did he write?
He wrote well, I think the book that he's most famous for is The Omnivore's Dilemma.
That's right. Yep.
And then he recently wrote a book called How to Change Your Mind.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting. It's actually all about, I haven't read it, but I heard him talk about it a little bit. But it's about psilocybin and psychedelics, and he is like this very seemingly straight-laced guy, professional journalist, does years of research to do something like writing The Omnivore's Dilemma, just a very respected person in the journalism world and great writer. And then he spent a few years after being, a real skeptic around psychedelics, going through the process of taking psychedelics and then writing about it.
Wow.
And one of the things that he had mentioned about tribes is, normally when you think of a tribe, you define a tribe. What is a tribe?
For me?
To you, yeah.
People who share the same customs, rituals, culture, and proximity, and maybe the same genetics structure. I don't know.
Right. And I would have defined it in the exact same way, or even if I were to expand on it, thinking about tribes even being like shared interests. Like I think it was Seth Godin who had a talk I really like called The Tribes We Lead, and he talked about like tribes of clowns or whatever. Like it doesn't matter. Like it could be whatever. And
that's a scary tribe, those clowns. I don't want any part of that.
Right. Or people who shots, and they all have this shared experience of being a math. What it's like. But how Michael Pollan had described it was a tribe defines everyone you're not connected with.
Right.
And I really like that. And two sides of the same coin, but being aware of, by the groups you associate with, what perspectives are you missing out on, I think is.
Sure. And when you're not in that group, you can justify dehumanizing those people, and all kinds of atrocities then get perpetrated, because we don't reach over or try to understand one another. But we're getting philosophical here now.
We are.
Yeah. But anyway, your poem sort of stimulated all that. I'm wondering if you read it to your dad.
The poem that I wrote, Ding, you mean?
No, the one that I wrote for you. Since the emotion was underneath it,
Yeah. I did show it to my mom. I did not show it to my dad yet. How have I not done that? I feel like that was a tragedy.
Well, I would really be interested to hear not only what your dad thinks about it, but what your mom thinks about it.
Yeah. What if I got him to read it now? Should I do?
Is he here right now? Don't put him on the spot. No.
I'll let you know on the next one.
Sure. Anyway, I was definitely identifying with the grief that he was feeling about that, and, I do a lot of writing about my own grief, losing my son. So I think there was some kind of kinship that I felt with your father and what you had shared with me. Also me having to go on and keep doing what I do, when terrible things happen, sometimes it's easy to say, I'm done. I'm just going to retreat. I'm not going to, care anymore. And so when you told that story about your dad, I was just impressed and moved, and it kind of resonated with me.
Yeah. It sounds like resonated in the way that the death of your son was a hard thing to deal with, and the ways in which you've been able to deal with it. I mean, that to me is something I really admire in what you're doing in the nonprofit world. And
actually, tonight I'm going over to the nonprofit. It's called 1330 Cancer Connect, and I'm going to be teaching a poetry workshop tonight. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. And then hopefully at the end of I think in October we have a gala event, and hopefully our teens and young adults will be reading some of the poems that they're going to be working on right now.
Nice.
So that'll be cool.
What are the poems that they're working on? Are they self-reflective, or are there different themes? How does that work?
Well, interestingly enough, the prompt for tonight is, what 5 things would you like to change most about the world? And so they're going to, kind of search for a subject and then start writing about it. And then we'll be working over the next few months to help them complete that poem. And we're doing it sort of in the slam poetry tradition. So, a poem that's passionate and performed, orally, not just for the page, but, spoken in front of an audience. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it works out.
Yeah. My guess is that it's going to go pretty well.
I hope so. I know they all have stories to tell. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you coaching them on the poems too?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm I'm kind of walking alongside them. I have invited a friend of mine who's very active in the slam community to come in. So he'll be coming in a few months from now to share his experience with slam poetry. I don't really do slam poetry. I do, more page poetry, but so this is a bit of a stretch for me. But, slam poetry starts with having a poem or a story. And so I can help them with that. But in terms of the dramatic side of it and performing it, that's where my friend Anderson will come in, and he can coach them on that, Yeah.
They'll help with the creation, the top, the story, the structure.
Yeah. All that stuff, right?
Yeah, I like it. Well, speaking of poems, I think there were a few that you had wanted to share.
Yeah, I have a book coming out in May sometime. I don't know the exact date. It's called "I Play His Red Guitar," and so over the last, 11, 12 years, I've been writing poems about my loss, and inspired by my son, who was a singer-songwriter and a poet in his own right. I don't know if I shared with you the quote that I found in his journal. Did I share that last time we talked? I think I did.
I think at one point. But...
Yeah, the quote that said, certainty is the cage that keeps us safe from curiosity. I've been released from the cage. I am the songbird, and I'm flying for the window. I know it's closed, but I plan on breaking through. So after he died, I was looking for a legacy project to work through my own grief. And I'd been writing poetry since the mid 90s. And I said, I'm going to take this really seriously. He was serious about his art. I'm going to be serious about my art to honor him. And so I've been writing these poems, and I'm really thrilled that, that these poems are going to be published soon. So I want to share a poem that talks about my son, his legacy to me, and where I got the title for the book. This poem is called "What I Wear," and I think the first writing of this happened when I was up in an airplane writing. When you're up in a plane, your perspective on the world is very different. It's very it's very elevated, to use that pun. But in other ways it is too. So you get a very unique perspective. So that's what this poem gave me, and I will read it to you now. It's called "What I Wear." Okay. This world above worlds is a prairie of clouds and sun glare. Below, the smoldering hearths shed smoke like a radiated hair. Worth less than his breath on earth, his song plays in my ear. Still, I listen for clues, the gift of his verse. See me wear this blue plaid shirt? I play his red guitar. We're back.
We are back. But yeah, it sounds like that poem, as I was listening to it, I was kind of envisioning perhaps like you sitting there reminiscing, and your son being inspiration for your own.
Exactly. And I still have, a CD that he made, a number of CDs that he made. So it's nice to have his voice recorded, to be able to
Yeah.
listen to those songs.
Right.
Yeah.
When do you find yourself listening to them?
Every so often. Yeah. They're I think they're probably on Spotify and wherever else,
Oh,
iTunes. Yeah. It's the band's called 5 Star Riot. 5 stars, all one word. And the
okay.
album's called Unfamiliar Sky.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I will.
take a listen. It's kind of got a pop punk style, but you might like it. You might find it interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I love it. It's cool because not only is my son, who passed away, singing, and he wrote the songs, but my other son's playing the drums. So,
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. He was my younger son was 13 when they made that album, and his brother was about 16 or so. Yeah.
Yeah. You had mentioned last time that your son, who had passed, was a real inspiration both for you and his brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
say more about that. In what ways has he been an inspiration?
Well, musically for sure, and creatively. Both my sons are into songwriting. My older son, more traditional kind of pop, folk, indie, rock, that kind of stuff. And then my other son's more into hip hop and, spoken word kind of things. And he's into electronic music.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they're both inspired by language, which my son was very inspired by, and also just creative expression. Being connected to an emotional life, and then finding some form of expression, being passionate, and also a sense of humor. Yeah. My son used to like to go to local shows where they'd have a mosh pit, and he found these moon boots at a thrift store that kind of made him look like the what was that show called? I'm blanking on the name. I'll come back to it.
Okay.
It was that guy, tall guy with red hair and glasses. You probably know. What is that movie?
Tall guy, red hair, and he had moon boot.
Yeah, he does a dance at the end of the movie.
Oh, Napoleon Dynamite.
That's the guy, yeah. Napoleon Dynamite. So he would wear his Napoleon Dynamite moon boots, and he'd go dance in the mosh pit, with all these macho guys who are like running into each other, really aggressive. And he'd go in there and he'd just be so goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was that kind of guy.
I love it.
Yeah.
I wonder what stories those hardcore moshers have about your son and seeing this. And then this guy ran in, and he kind of looked like Napoleon Dynamite.
They probably didn't know what to think.
Yeah.
I think they just pushed him out of the mosh pit. He had fun. It was fun to watch him. Yeah.
Yeah. Were there other poems that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I have another one. This one's called Elegy for a Songbird, so it kind of references that quote that I shared with you earlier that we found in his journal.
Yeah.
Elegy for a Songbird. See the debris of his story piled in the boxes we placed in the attic, the ribbons and trophies. This bluebird shirt for a quilt we'll never stitch. Those progress reports. A pleasure to have in class, a young man who gets it like he once got that bass at the lake. See him trolling a lure off the side of our old metal boat, then landing a fish that I struggled to get off the hook. See him standing alone on the slate shore of our summer home, offering bread for the mallards. See him whistling like the black-capped chickadee. See us now, lit up and singing his song by the campfire. You are a bird breaking out of its cage. That grief, near the spot I dug a hole to plant his sunset maple, a single sunset maple. I thought the ache in my shoulders would sprout wings.
Yeah, I love the just natural arc of that story, from the room and the items that give way to the thought of the time when catching a fish that was so big, your thought struggled to get it off, and yeah, and
of course the double meaning in that line,
which,
I wanted to get him off the hook,
yeah,
because of his cancer. So, I couldn't do it. So there's that theme that runs throughout, and I think anybody who's lost a child can relate, that you couldn't protect your child from this terrible disease, and so that's part of my story now, coming to some form of acceptance about that, not being able to do my job as a father. So this poem kind of deals with some of that, the ache.
Yeah, the feeling as though, if it would sprout your own wings.
Yeah. I have one more I want to share, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So I was down in Florida at a poetry festival, and we were given a prompt of some kind, and I can't remember exactly, but I wanted to write a poem that could be read forward and backwards and still have meaning.
Yeah.
So this poem is a kind of palindrome, but not really, not in the strictest sense, but it has the spirit of that. This is called Ars Poetic, That Dragonfly. And the dragonfly image is really important to me now. It's like the totem symbol that I have to remember my son, because the dragonfly represents transformation. And I may have talked about this with you before. I don't remember. Do you remember talking about this?
I think dragonfly.
Yeah. Well, toward the end of his life, there was a fundraising concert, a benefit concert at Water Street Music Hall, and he performed. He was very sick, but he still got up there and sang. And a lot of people saw a dragonfly buzzing around his head and took it as a good omen. And the dragonfly is significant in our family because of our lake home, dragonflies all the time there. So this image is important to me. So this is called Ars Poetic, That Dragonfly. So you'll see that the poem goes halfway and then it reverses itself. So see if you can catch that, okay?
Okay.
It buzzed you in this blue light where every eye and ear could feel the burden of your metastatic song. So near your head and iridescent of our fear and hope that you'd hold on. We took it as a good omen, every reason to believe. And we believe the transmutation of those stained glass wings, that distillation we could barely fathom. What remains as long as you've been gone, that distillation we could barely fathom. The transmutation of those stained glass wings, every reason to believe. And we believed. We took it as a good omen of our fear and hope that you'd hold on. So near your head in iridescence, the burden of your metastatic song, where every eye and ear could feel it buzz you in this blue light. So there it is, a mirror image poem.
Yeah. What prompted you wanting to make it in such a way?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's probably a lot of reasons that I'm not sure I'm fully aware of. So we could have a therapy session where you could bring it out of me. But I think I had heard earlier that week somebody say that this poet was so good that their lines could be read forward and backwards and still have meaning and integrity. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh, that sounds like a really interesting challenge. So mostly it was the challenge of it. And then I wanted to write about that story of the benefit concert. And so it just kind of happened, you know. And it was one of those poems that I didn't really have to edit a whole lot. It almost came fully formed. So I took that as a good omen too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Remember where you were when you wrote it?
Yeah, I was in this workshop down in Florida. And I probably wrote the poem in less than a half an hour, you know, just in one sitting. Yeah, I don't know how or why that happens sometimes.
Yeah. Inspiration.
Yeah, so I'll give my son credit for that one. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. Anyway, so thank you for indulging me, letting me read some of those poems.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice. So one of the things that we also wanted to touch on was that last time, now, you and I have gotten to know each other a bit over the last few months, and we've talked about, or you've brought up your son having died from cancer, but in the last episode that we did, when you brought it up, especially because I was aware, oh, this might be shared with other people, I wasn't sure how to react.
Right.
And we did a debrief right after, and I brought that up, and I was saying, well, what might have been an appropriate way to react, or how in other situations when someone shares something with you that clearly is meaningful to them, but you're not sure how to respond, what are ways that you could do that? And even, maybe specifically talking about cancer. And so I thought that would be an interesting topic to explore with you. And also, for this part, I am bringing on a special guest.
All right.
Which is my mom.
Hi.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Alice. I'm Zach's mom. And I am interested because my brother died of lymphoma a year ago.
Oh.
And one of my good friends, my age, is in the throes of unsuccessful, it appears, treatment for lymphoma right now. And so my ears perked up when I heard that you had lost your son and that you had your nonprofit organization. And now that I'm sitting here listening to your poems, I'm moved by them, and sort of have to admit I'm a very concrete, hands-on person, so poetry somewhat frustrates me because I expect to be able to understand every single word and phrase, whether it go with the emotion of it.
Mm-hmm.
But some of what you read, I can't wait till the book's published. I also know I'm a visual person, very oral,
Yeah.
so I can't wait to see the words on paper. But I would be really interested in your helping me to think about how to talk to my friend.
Well, first of all, I would say, I'm really sorry to hear about the loss of your brother. I mean, what was that like for you to go through with your brother having cancer?
Well, he was back in Kentucky where we grew up, and so I really would only get to see him like once a year when we would, go for a holiday or something. But the thought that a sibling of mine younger than me was going to die first has been upsetting to me. And I did go back and visit him several times during his treatment and stuff. And it's hard to think that he isn't there now, even though we didn't see each other that often. But I guess in the past couple of months, it's actually even gotten a little bit harder to think that missed opportunities to share people's lives and then they're gone.
Yeah. That is, I think, one of the most painful aspects of loss it's all the things that you won't be able to do or experience as a result because of the loss, and then also the being left behind, a feeling of, hey, this is not how it should be. I should have gone first, So that's very difficult to deal with. I know my son's grandfather was in his 90s when my son passed away, and he was devastated by it, just saying, how could this happen? I should be the one going, and I think I felt that way about my son. I wanted to take his place. I'm not sure that that's how you felt about your brother, but I'm relating to the fact that you didn't get to experience all that you would have liked to have experienced with your brother, and now he's gone, and you're filled with a sadness and a grief, and now you have a friend who's also been diagnosed with lymphoma.
Yes.
Wow.
And she, in fact, I was sitting listening to you and Zach talk. I got a text from another friend who was telling me that our friend has shared that everything has not worked. Nothing has worked. And she failed 2 different kinds of chemo, and then this new genetic manipulation thing called CAR T is not working. And
Yeah.
there's probably not much left. And she's like she's my age, but she's really vibrant, funny, just, a person you need to spend time with. And it's like, it isn't fair.
It's not fair. Yeah. I still feel angry about, my son's cancer. I remember picking up my other son at school once and seeing all these kids coming out of school and getting in their cars, with their parents, and being so angry, like, why do they get to do that and I don't get to do that anymore? And I would get so angry, I would picture myself wanting to pick up a chair and throw it through a window. I was that angry. I never did that, but I wanted to. Maybe someday I'll find a window that nobody needs and I'll get a chair and throw it through it.
Window crashing.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a fantasy of mine. Maybe I'll put it in my bucket list. Something I need to do someday. But for your friend, maybe you could tell me, like, what is it that you feel maybe uncomfortable about in terms of talking to her about her cancer?
Well, she and we all were just so hopeful. Mm-hmm. And now I think it's come to a place that, probably have to realize that it is going to take her.
Yeah.
And watching my brother's decline.
Yeah.
For my friend.
Yeah.
To go through it, not wanting. I don't want to see it.
Are you afraid to tell her how you feel?
In the sense that I don't want her to be upset and add to a burden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is what inhibits us. We don't want to hurt somebody who's already hurting.
Right.
I would say that probably the opposite is true. Not talking to her hurts more and burdens her more than talking to her. So, there needs to be some courage to just get over that initial fear or discomfort and simply say, I'm devastated by what you're going through. And I'm imagine you are too. Can we talk about this? I'm just so sad and so angry. How are you feeling? You're such a dear friend to me. And the thought of losing you just makes me want to cry. How do you want to say goodbye? You talk about those sort of things. I remember sitting in my living room and with my whole family and saying, what do we need to talk about? Is there anything, that is unresolved between us. Can we talk about that? Is there anything that you wish for us? Because he knew at that point that he was going to die. It was still only a matter of time. I remember telling him that I wish I could go where you're going, and I broke down crying. I wept.
Yeah.
So that I think he appreciated knowing how we felt. I think his anguish was as much for us as it was for himself, worrying about how we were going to cope with losing him. So I think that is something that a person with cancer who knows they're going to die, they carry with them. They really want to make sure that the people that they love are going to be okay when they're gone. And so giving some reassurance, talking to the person about end of life care. I'm not saying that that should be your role, but it's helpful to have somebody do that. I know at 1330 Cancer Connect, we have the Road I Traveled, which is a guide to help people with their end of life planning. And that can be very, very reassuring and comforting to folks to be able to talk about these things. I think they don't want you to feel sorry for them,
And how do you not?
Yeah. Well, I know my son got annoyed when people came over with their sympathy calls, like, oh, I'm so sorry. What can we do for you? That didn't feel authentic or real. And these were not people that were in his everyday life. It almost felt to him like they felt obligated to come over. So if you don't have a close connection with someone, sometimes it's best to just respect them and give them the space. But if you're a close, intimate friend, then I think you move toward them and you just say, hey, I'm going to miss you. I mean, what would you say to a friend who's going to move away?
Yeah.
It's, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss you. Hey, let's do some things together. Let's make some memories before you go if we can. We'll just spend time. Let's play a board game. I think one of the hard things for my son as he got closer to death is he was in so much pain. So it was hard, to, kind of figure out how much he could tolerate. So, being sensitive to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that what I think was true for my brother too.
Sure. Yeah. And there are some people who are like definitely on the inside in the family who are in the inner circle. And then there are friends. So I guess you have to assess how close of a friend you are, how deep the attachment is, and the deeper the attachment, the more you would want to spend time, definitely spend time. I don't know if there are people around your friend who could give you some read on that about, how she's doing and would she want you to visit?
Oh, at this point, I have a sense that she does.
Okay. Then I think she probably would feel comforted by any contact and even just having normal conversation, it doesn't have to all be about, oh, you're going to die. This is terrible. Well, it is terrible. And you can talk about it, but just talk about your real feelings. Is your friend an expressive person? Does she talk about her feelings?
I'd say we haven't done that.
Okay.
But I suspect that with her daughters, she probably does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What has been the nature of your friendship? Has it mostly been just having a good time together, laughs and fun?
Having worked together, watching movies together, talking about what we like. Having fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you just say, I'm going to miss this time with you. I've loved all the time that we've shared together. I guess it's the same thing you would do, whenever you want to get closure in any relationship, talking about, the experiences you had and what it's been like to have this friendship and what she means to you. I think I'm thinking from my own point, I would really love to hear what people thought about me. You know, I mean, if I'm dying, I wouldn't want them to, be silent. I would want them to share. I probably would want to share too. I think the closer I got to death, I'd probably want to, really make sure I said everything I needed to say to the people that I loved. So I don't know your friend though, and you know her better, obviously.
I think, yeah.
But just be yourself. That's what she loves about you as her friend. Just be you.
And I appreciate your guidance, and I think our other friend who just texted me, I think she and I will have this conversation about how we want to interact with our friend who is living with cancer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Good guidance. I am curious, where did you come up with the name 1330 Cancer Connect? Is the 1330 significant?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because our mission is to help teens and young adults with cancer live their very best lives through every part of their cancer experience. And so we work with people from the age of 13 to 30. So that's why it's called that. But the organization had a different name when it started. So I'm on the board. I did not start the organization. I'm the board president. The person who started the organization is Lauren Spiker. She lost her daughter, Melissa Sangbush, to cancer when she was just about, college age, going into college.
Mm-hmm.
And so her daughter, toward the end of her life, said, "If you've learned anything from me, do something to make a difference, to make things better." And then Lauren started this organization, and we provide psychosocial support to teens and young adults with cancer. And so the name change came as our vision started to move beyond Rochester, and that we wanted to start opening up chapters in other communities. And so we wanted a name that said something about who we are and what we're all about. So we're about connection, and we're about this age group. And so that's why the name change. It was really courageous of Lauren to let us change the name, because it used to be called Melissa's Living Legacy. And so her concern, and rightly so, is she never wanted us to lose, Melissa's inspiration. So, Zach, you and I have been talking about how, my son inspires me. Well, this is how Melissa inspired Lauren. So, we as an organization will never forget Melissa's story. So the name change helps people beyond the inner circle of Lauren's life know what we're all about. But within what we do with our traditions, we have these ways of honoring Melissa. We have a legacy giving circle, which is very much tied to the name of Melissa's Living Legacy. So, and the other thing that's really been quite remarkable is that we meet these other people who sadly don't get to stay with us, and their legacy too sort of gets added to Melissa's and really inspires this work. But also the people that are still living, a lot of people survive cancer. So that's the good news too. But, there are a lot of challenges that they have after going through just tremendous, horrendous kind of treatments. It takes a toll on the body and on the mind. So, they need support. I think your friend, one of the things that happens to people with cancer is that their friends around them, especially younger, maybe not so much with your friend now, but with like teenagers in particular, there's this sense like, I'm too afraid to talk to you, and maybe you're contagious, or I don't want that, or I don't know what to say, I'm really uncomfortable. And then what happens inadvertently is these teens and young adults feel isolated and become very, very lonely. So one of the things that's great about 1330 is we provide a place where they can talk and be normal and laugh and play and do all the things that everybody normally does, but not have to worry about people looking at them sideways like there's something terribly wrong with them and they're fragile, because they're not fragile. Your friend's not fragile either. She just has an illness. And so she's the same person that she always was. She just, she's just further along in her development, or quicker to her end of life than you would hope she would be. But she's the same person. So in some ways, just keep relating to her like you always have.
Yes. Good advice. Thank you. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm going to keep in my mind your image of sitting in the plaid shirt and playing the red guitar. That just spoke to me.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I can't wait for you to see the book cover. I'll send a copy of the book cover to Zach and he can share it with you, because my daughter-in-law is a really amazing artist. Her name is Allison Cote. Used to be Allison Coles. Her parents are both really amazing artists. Her mother is Laura Wilder. I don't know if you know, not the Laura Wilder from Little House on the Prairie, but she does the beautiful artwork. And her dad, Allison's dad, is David Coles, and he's an amazing illustrator. Allison has these great art genes. So she designed my book cover, and I wanted her to do something reminiscent of Picasso, to kind of a cubist, almost fragmented feel, because I thought that emotion would sort of resonate for what this book's all about. And then I wanted the red guitar to be very prominent. So when you see it, I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I do. I was just blown away when she gave it to me.
I'm looking forward.
Yeah. She actually did the Lilac poster this year, the Lilac Festival poster. So she's the youngest artist ever to get that assignment. So I'm very proud of her.
Sounds like your immediate family and your married into family all have the same creative genes.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, it's fun to be around, really fun.
Great way to be able to express all those feelings.
Yeah.
That we all have.
Yeah. The other interesting thing about the red guitar is that it belonged to my sister, and my sister gifted it to my son, and then he gifted it to me when he died. So it's so interesting to me how we came to have this red guitar.
Yeah.
And do you play the guitar?
I do play it. It's right over there. I don't play it enough, though. I don't play it as well as my son, Alex, does. He's an amazing guitar player.
Yeah.
Hoping to be able to come hear him sometime too, but he's on the road now, right?
He is on his honeymoon right now. He's in St. Thomas, but actually he's going to be playing with Michaela Davis at the Lilac Festival. So if you want to hear him play, they're going to be doing one of the shows there. So look for Michaela Davis, because that's the band he's in. But he's in some other bands, and he does this singer-songwriter stuff too. So yeah, he gets around. He's doing his thing, and his brother would be proud of him. Really proud.
That's cool. I can't wait to see him play again.
That's right. You came to that fundraiser. Yeah, and I think, did you hear him in both bands or just in Michaela?
Just in Michaela.
Because he played earlier in another band that he's in called Danger Bird, where he doesn't play the drums. He plays guitar and he sings.
Yeah. Multi-talented.
Yeah. I did teach him to play Blackbird on the guitar.
Did you?
Yeah, but it turns out that I learned it incorrectly. So, but it got him noodling around with the guitar. And then when my son Charlie got sick, he worked with a guy named Phil Marshall, who is a really great artist, a great guitar player. And Alex learned a lot from Phil. Phil was doing work as a music therapist and working with a lot of kids through the Compassion Net program through Ellis. And that was the perfect thing for Alex, to have someone like Phil just hang out and teach him how to play the guitar. Yeah. So I'm super grateful to Phil. Phil tragically lost his older brother to, I think, a heart attack. Phil was in a band called Colorblind James. I don't know if you've ever heard of that band. Yeah, you should check them out sometime.
Okay.
Colorblind James. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of songs and artists that I'll need to be following up on.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah, Colorblind James. They were a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And then Phil does some solo stuff around town.
Yeah. That's cool. But it sounds like it started with learning Blackbird.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's an interesting song too.
What makes it interesting?
Well, it's about the civil rights movement. That song. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. So it's basically, I don't know if it was after Martin Luther King was shot or not, but if you look that up, Paul McCartney talks about it, about how he was moved by the civil rights movement and wanted to pay tribute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That song's a beautiful song.
Yeah. It is the one song I know how to play on guitar.
There you go. Well, you should show me how you play it, and maybe it'll correct how I'm doing it wrong.
Sounds good. We'll have a play date.
All right, cool. I'll bring my red guitar.
Nice.
All right. Thank you again very much.
You're welcome,
Appreciate
Alice. It was really nice to meet you and to hear your story. It's really interesting what Zach's doing with this business.
It is. Yeah, I know. And all of the things we learned about each other recording that got him started on this. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Well, my hope is it spurs more conversations like these that can help create meaning for people and be helpful. So,
all right.
Cool.
Okay. Well, thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you for joining.
All right.
Cool. So before we segue over to our last on stories that we want to tell each other and having a coffee I thought it might be interesting to reflect on that conversation that we just had. You guys, in some ways, my mom's story was a surprise to you.
Yeah.
So walk us through a little bit how you approached that and what you were thinking and how you came up with the questions and reactions and how did you approach that moment?
Well, I'm meeting your mom for the first time and was moved by the fact that she lost her brother, and I immediately felt a connection. And so, I wanted to convey to your mom just the sadness that I felt for her loss. And I think that was part of it, just trying to hear, just hear maybe what's implied in the story that she's telling. So, and then I was just curious. I wanted to know more about how she felt about it, how she was dealing with it. And then, when she shared that with me, being able to sort of empathize and validate, mirror what I was hearing, and then ask her about her friend, and then to just, I don't know, identify, and then also let your mom just share her story.
Yeah. That was one of the things that I noticed was that the very first thing, well, outside of first mirroring, like you said, and saying, I'm sorry to hear about your brother. But the first thing that you did was you said, well, what was that like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the invitation to say more, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times people just stop with, I'm sorry to hear that I can't imagine. And that's all they say. They don't invite more story. So, I want to know more. And, and I think people want to share more. I think I would have been able to tell if your mom was uncomfortable sharing, I would have backed off. But she seemed eager to talk about it, and then eager to share, her thoughts and feelings about what was going on, and then to ask her own questions,
Right.
So just asking someone, what was that like for you, is probably the easiest way to get somebody to start talking about their story.
Yeah. And creates a space that, like you said, it invites them to just have, but then to perhaps even ask her own questions. And
yeah.
I
think if I had more time with your mom, I probably would have been maybe done less advice giving and more listening. Just to get her to talk more about her friendship and what this friend means to her and how she feels about it.
Why do you think you went to the advice giving? What
Probably
was it
because that was maybe what I sensed was the purpose of what we were doing here. Because the question was, what can I say or what should I say? And then plus, I didn't think this was going to go on for 2 hours, maybe. Although, but I would want to know more, and maybe you'll have a chance to ask your mom about that. Just to say, I mean, really, it's pretty profound. How do you say goodbye to a friend? A lot of people don't know how to say goodbye.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure I'm that great at it either.
Yeah. I'll say one other thing, and then we'll share the stories and maybe wrap up. But what I love the frame of, what would you say to a friend who is going to move away? And it made me actually think of my last roommate that I had in San Francisco, right before I was moving away from San Francisco, and also he was moving away from San Francisco as well and going to do his own thing. And a quick story about that was that I recently had the chance to go surprise him he was having a surprise party in San Francisco for his own going away. And I would not have been able to go on this trip if it wasn't for my mom. She was at the airport actually going to a funeral in Kentucky, where she's from, for a close.
Mm-hmm.
That was really influential in her life. And the flight was going to be, or it was overbooked. And so they were offering vouchers, and she ran up to the desk and said, is this transferable? And can I still get to Kentucky? And the answer was yes. And the amount of the voucher was $600, which was the cost of the flight to San Francisco, which allowed me.
Wow.
So I'm very, very, very grateful for that, because it was, I think it meant a lot to both me and to Scott, my last roommate, that we got to see each other before we both dove into our own
That's
things.
Great. I like that story. Nice.
Yeah. All right. So what story do we want to be able to tell each other in 20 years?
Yeah. Lay it on me, man.
All right. Sounds good. So, oh man, in 20 years, and this is one where winging it to some degree, which is good that I'm going first, because then I get to be totally present and not spend the time that you're telling me your story trying to think about what I want to say. So this is better this way. I mean, I think in 20 years, what would be really exciting to me would be, maybe our families are with us and we're being able to escape away for an hour on our own while they do their own thing and before we go rejoin them. And so I think by that time, I hope that I will put myself in a position to be the best dad that I can be the best family man that I can be. I've figured out how to balance my extreme work ethic and trying to do something like this with making sure that I make time for the people that are most important to me. And that our trip to Paris is a reflection of that.
That's good.
Yeah. In the work world, I hope that I hope that their story will have been the beginning of a career where I've dedicated myself to helping myself and others improve their own communication and depth of their relationships with the people that matter to them, and that they won't have put off the conversations that matter and talking about what they meant to each other, and that each person will have shared how they felt and will have heard from the other about how they felt. And whatever form that takes, I don't know what form it will take, but or even if it will be their story itself that will do it, or if just starting this will have set me in that direction. But I hope that I continue to dedicate myself to that cause, because I think it's a worthwhile cause to pursue.
Well, by what I'm seeing so far, it definitely is. It's very, very amazing, actually. The conversation we're having, I can imagine that multiplied, by millions of people would be quite stunning. So 20 years from now, I hope that I'll be a multimillionaire because I bought shares when you did your IPO, and and that will be the reason why I can afford to go to Paris then. Yeah, that would be great. Well, it was interesting what you said, because I wrote down, I actually wrote notes in preparation for this, so I'm not going to wing it as much. But I want to be able to say to you that I was more present to my family and friends, less stressed out about my everyday obligations, that they could say that I truly was there for them. So that kind of resonated with what you said. I think I want to be stronger and more flexible than I was 20 years ago. I'll be 79, I think, in 20 years. So I want to be in better shape at 79 than I am now. So that's my vision. I'm going to go work for it.
Yeah. So stronger.
What's that?
So physically speaking,
well,
stronger.
yeah. And I'd like to be psychologically stronger and more flexible too. So yeah. And then, I'd like to travel to every continent in the world. I'd like to see all the continents. So I've already been to Europe, so Paris will be old hat, I suppose, at that time.
Right. We won't have to worry about seeing all the spots, because we've been there, done that. We can just enjoy our time there and presence with each other.
Because we won't be, we won't be all anxious about missing out. We won't have any FOMO, right?
Right.
No FOMO. Right.
Yeah. I like it.
Professionally, I want to say that I figured out how to integrate poetry, psychotherapy, and mindfulness. That somehow that will have been fully integrated in my work. And I have some ideas about what I want to be doing in terms of wellness workshops, especially in the cancer community, that I think might intersect with psychotherapy, creative writing, and mindfulness. So that's sort of what I'm thinking about. And hopefully in 20 years, I'll say, wow, it all came together and it was really meaningful work to do. And I feel very satisfied.
I like that. What do you see?
What's that?
What do you see as the intersection of poetry, mindfulness, and psychotherapy?
Well, for me, poetry, creative writing is, the art form of feeling, and also a way to, give voice to those things that matter most to us. I also believe that poetry is a container, or art can be a container for the chaotic things in our lives.
Yeah.
Gregory Orr talks about that. Poetry is survival. So in that regard, and then, psychotherapy is all about, personal reflection and exploration and growth. Recovery certainly, but I like to think of it more as in a more existential way than that. And then mindfulness is something that I'm trying to deepen, try to be more and more present in the here and now, because to write poetry means to be present. To be a good psychotherapy means to be present, not hurrying off to be somewhere else,
Right.
So those things I think all resonate for me. The mindfulness research that's coming out shows just how beneficial it is, how it helps people to be more in tune to the things that matter most to them, and to have their behaviors really line up with their values in really meaningful, profound ways, and not doing things impetuously or impulsively, not doing things that you would regret later on.
Right.
So that's a little bit about what I think about it.
I like it.
Yeah, and I want my poetry to help inspire other people to find their own voice. I'm really thrilled that you wrote a poem. A really fine poem, by the way.
Well, thank you, and thank you for challenging me.
Yeah, I mean, really. Yeah, you really got inside my head there.
How'd that make you feel?
A little unsettled. Actually, really delighted. Delighted.
Good.
Yeah.
Sometimes those feelings can coexist.
Of course. That's what makes humans, uniquely human. We're able to have mixed feelings.
Yeah.
What is somebody said? Poetry is the clear expression of mixed feelings.
Oh, I like that. Poetry is the clear expression of mixed feelings.
Yeah. So what else do you want to tell me in 20 years?
Oh, what else do I want to tell you in 20 years? Well, I'd like to be able to look back and really have a strong sense that I want to be able to say that I have, as best I could, behaved in a way that was in accordance with my values from the time that we first met to then. And there will be misgivings and things that didn't go as planned or as I hoped, but that I hope I can honestly say that I had lived a life of integrity up to that point. And that even though decisions may have not gone the way I wanted, that I am comfortable with the choice that I made, and that I have focused on myself and earning the respect of others, and didn't let my questions or third-party expectations shape my.
Wow. Well said. Inspirational.
Yeah.
Aspirational. I like it. Yeah. That's good.
Cool. Anything else that you wanted to share?
I want my wife and I to stay really active and vibrant in the literary community. And I would love for us to co-teach. I'd like to say 20 years from now that she and I collaborated as artistic partners, and that we led workshops together and, gave readings together. We're actually reading together this week on Wednesday. There's a literary pub crawl this Wednesday night from 6 to 9. It's sponsored by Bloom Poetry, which is trying to really promote poetry in the Rochester area. And so she and I are going to be reading back to back, which I'm pretty excited about.
Is there details? I want to read this.
Yeah. Well, go to my Facebook page and you'll see some info there.
Okay. I will check it out. Yeah. I do have an additional hope that we will also have found ways to work together in a creative way that helps to make meaning and deeper
Yeah,
connections.
I would love that. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, let's book a date now for 20 years from now.
I know. I think we should. I honestly think we should. We should book a date for 20 years, buy the tickets. They'll be as cheap as they can be. And
So hopefully those airlines will still be there.
right. I think we should do it. When should we pick a date now?
When's your birthday?
December 6th.
I don't want to be in Paris in December. I don't know. Maybe we can go on your birthday. I don't know. Let's think. Any other significant dates? I would think, sometime in June would be pretty cool in Paris.
Yeah, we could make up a significant event in June.
Yeah.
Gives it meaning outside of that. We just wanted to go in June.
We could go on Father's Day.
Ooh, I like that.
Although our kids might not like that. Well, hopefully you'll have kids by then.
We
No, not Father's Day.
No.
We'll figure it out.
All right. I like it being around Father's Day, though.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll have our family come with us then. We'll all be together.
Yeah.
So the week of Father's Day, that's what we'll do.
The week of Father's Day. All right.
Mark your calendar now.
Yeah. All right. I'll let you know when I bought the ticket.
Sweet.
And a very old mother will get to come too, I hope.
Yes.
You'll be there. You'll definitely be there.
You will be there. Dad will be there.
99 would be an excellent age to travel to Paris.
Yeah.
I agree.
No,
completely.
92. 92.
Oh,
Okay.
Age
perfect.
too fast.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Do you realize your mother just gave everybody her age right now?
She did.
I think that's bold. I love it.
Yeah. A very youthful woman for sure.
Well,
Say that way.
Mm-hmm.
definitely, I could tell. She's got the same passion that you do.
Yes. Absolutely.
Did she hear your gratitude for her before? I hope you got some credit for that.
She heard it.
Oh, good.
Thank you before, but you heard it again.
Good.
To take us in our dotage.
Yes, I have made the promise, and we're only as good as the promises that we keep. I was once told that I will buy a guest house behind my house where my parents can live.
Oh.
At times, I've asked them if a trailer is okay. So.
Well, it better be a tricked out trailer. It better have all the creature comforts.
Right. Exactly. To drive where you want to.
Yeah. Oh, I see. You're gonna get them a house that's portable.
Right. Yeah.
That's funny.
For them.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's what they would love.
Of course.
All right. Beautiful. Should we plan another session?
Yeah, sure.
What let's see. What would we want to talk about in the next session? What were things that popped up for you that you said, hey, you know what? I'd want to come back to that, but I didn't take the chance this time.
I'd like to talk more about mindfulness, everyday practical mindfulness, about how it works and why it works and why we need more of it. That interests me as a subject.
I like that.
I'd like to hear more about your vision for TheirStory and really all the values and philosophy that underlies it. Why are you so passionate to do this project? I think that would be interesting for people to hear.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear, maybe stories that have shaped us, maybe early stories that had an impact on, as we look back on, the people that we've become and what we, why we do what we do, because you get the 2020 hindsight now,
Right.
but it would be interesting, to say what stories from your childhood and your early development propelled you to be who you are today. I know we covered that a little bit in the first time we talked, but maybe it would be interesting to go even further back.
Right.
I
like it. I'll contemplate. I have one in me, but I will contemplate others.
I did an exercise once in another workshop where the teacher, who was Gregory Orr, said, keep a journal of just everything that you remember. I remember, and then I remember, I remember, I remember, I remember. It'll really be quite remarkable for you to see how much you actually remember.
Yeah. Do you think by the process of actually writing, or?
Yeah, I mean, as you prepare for our next conversation,
Yes.
do that exercise, and then maybe star 2 or 3 of them that seem, like stories you really want to, delve into.
Okay. Yeah. And I will put in the prep.
Cool. Great.
Cool. All right.
All right.
Should we pick a date? And then I'll let you go?
Sure.
Okay.
Monday afternoons are always good for me, so.
Beautiful. Should we make this a bi-weekly thing?
I'm open to it.
Which would be, the next would be Monday, May 6th.
Monday, May 6th?
Yes.
Well, let me look at my calendar. Monday, May 6th. It's wide open.
All right. How about we do 1 p.m.?
Okay.
Okay. I will send out an invite.
Great.
Cool.
See you in 2 weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.
All right, man. Bye, Zach.
Bye, Charlie.